You can draw this in Procreate, or actually you can paint it on your iPad with digital watercolor brushes. I'll show you all the steps from sketching to inking to watercolor painting, and at the end you will end up with a lovely little storefront. And if you want to take it even further, then you can come and join me at Patreon for the exclusive second part of this tutorial. For this tutorial, we are working on a canvas that is 2500 pixels by 2500 pixels. We'll be using some brushes that are already in the Procreate app, but also some brushes from my treasure chest brush pack. You can get it for free just by going to freefromflow.com. Oh, and just a quick reminder before we get started, don't forget to share your work. I always enjoy browsing through all of your results. But now, if you're ready, let's get started. We are going to start out with very simple shapes, and I'm going to use a sketching brush. I'll be using the round chalk pencil from the treasure chest brush pack, but you can use any kind of sketching brush, whatever you prefer, and just grab a dark color like black or dark gray, doesn't really matter. Now I have the opacity set at 100%. I have my size set to 50. And now we are going to start by drawing a square. And to make that even easier than it already is, we are going to turn on the drawing guide by going to the wrench, then to canvas, and then you can turn on the drawing guide here. And then you can use these squares to kind of measure your rectangle. And what you can also do is turn on drawing assist. You can do that by going to your layer, then tapping it and turning on drawing assist. And now all your lines will follow this grid. So you can only make horizontal and vertical lines. And for the width of our little shop, I want to go for about 18 squares. And I'm just going to guess it right now. I think it's it's about this. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Well, a little bit wider, maybe something like this. And I want to go down like 20 blocks. I'm just going to guess it. This, maybe it's something like this. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. We can go a little bit lower. And then I'll go to the other side and then connect this. And then I want to add a little extra at the top, a little bit higher like this, a little bit wider. And we have like a sidewalk here. So we'll make an extra line here and here. Now, because I also want to draw some vertical lines and some more loose lines, I'm going to turn off drawing assist. So go back to the layer, tap the layer and turn off drawing assist. So we can also make a little diagonal line here. And I want to make a line about over here. Keep it loose. And then a diagonal line like this. And then back to the right. This is like a sunshade here for our shop. With a line like this. And now let's make a line going down here. And then I want to make some windows here and a door. I want the door to be in the center. And it'll go up like this. So we get something like this, and then we have maybe a little rectangle here on top of our door. And we have a big window on this side and one on the other side as well. Now, of course, you can turn on drawing assist if you like your lines to be very straight, or you can keep your sketch pretty loose. I want the overall look of this watercolor artwork to be very loose, and I want it to have nice and wonky lines, so I'm not worried about my sketch being a little bit messy. So we have a door in the center. We have two big windows over here. Let's make a window over here as well, but that's a little bit more narrow. So we'll make a rectangle like this, and then another one on this side. Try to space them pretty much equally. So try to keep the distance between the side of the wall and the window equal, or pretty much equal. And we can put a little extra rectangle on top like this, over here as well. And I want like a cross in the middle over here as well. We are going to add more detail to our line art when we create the line art. Our sketch is just a base, a main guide for our line art. Make an extra line here. It's just so we roughly know where we want our stuff to be. So we have this sidewalk. We'll have these diagonal lines. And I want a little plant here. So first we'll make the pot, just a shape like this. And then a bit like a triangular shape for a little bush. And let's make 2 of them over here as well. So first a pot, just a simple pot shape. A little bit more narrow at the bottom and wider at the top. And then like a bit of a rounded triangular shape. And then another one next to it here. A little bit behind it, so we'll go a little bit higher for our line. Then up like this. And maybe this one is a bit more like rounded, a little bit smaller. Now we can add some extra detail for our door. We can give it 2 windows, like one over here. And then a smaller one here. Maybe a line over here. For our sunshade here. Now this should be enough to guide you during the line art process. Now I do want to move it upward a little bit. So let's go to the move and transform tool, a little arrow here. I'm going to move it up just slightly so it's a bit more centered on our canvas. Then tap the arrow again and let's turn off our drawing guide. You can go to the wrench, then to canvas, and then turn off the drawing guide. So now let's go ahead and work on our line art. First thing we need to do is lower the opacity of our sketch. So you can go to the layer menu and then tap the N and then slide to the left with the slider to, for instance, 30 or 29%, something around that range. Then tap the plus for a new layer on top. Now for the color, I'd like to use the first color in our color palette for our Watercolor Storefront. And for our brush, I would like to go to the inking brushes, the Procreate standard inking brushes. And I'd like to use the tinderbox. Where is it? There we have it, the tinderbox brush. Now the opacity should be at 100%, and I'd like to set the size to 30%. And now you can start wherever you like and start drawing the line art. And remember, this is not about perfectionism. You can create wonky lines. It'll add character to your drawing. We'll start with the window. I'll make this line on top. And the harder you press, the thicker your line will become. So don't press too hard. You can see I'm making a wonky line here. That's totally fine. You don't want it to look too neat, too perfect. It'll look more natural, more like real watercolor and ink if you have some of that wonkiness. So first we have this like rectangle with a part on top and a thinner part at the bottom, and then we'll make these smaller windows. We'll use that cross as a guide. So we'll make one over here and one here. Nice and slow. And this one. Up to the right and down just like this. And then you can make a similar window on this side. Then let's move on to the top area. I'm going to rotate my canvas a little bit like this. It makes it easier to create a line here. And you can stop halfway and then continue like this. You don't have to do it in one go. Then I'll make another line just above it. It's also a great exercise actually for your hand stability. Now let's make another one. It's nice to add these little details, lots of lines. Then we'll connect these lines and make a diagonal one here and on this side as well. And now we need to connect that top part. Then let's work on that sunshade. We'll make this line first underneath our windows. Then a diagonal line. Another one here. And of course, if your lines get too wonky, if you have a lot of issues with your stability, then you can go to the brush settings and go to stabilization and experiment with the amount of streamline and stabilization to get more smooth lines in case you really have perhaps a tremor, then that can really help you out and get lines that are a little bit less wonky. Just don't take all the wonkiness out of them. You can see that my lines are a little bit shaky as well, but it'll look really good in the end. Then a line like this, a little bit diagonal. Then up here, connect these, and let's make a line downward here. Then let's work on this little plant. First, let's make the pot. Bottom part is less wide. Here we have a slight curve, then up like this. And let's make two lines like this, slightly curved. And then for the plant, let's not make an entire outline, but just a few of these squiggles. Just in a few of these places, a little bit over here. So just following that shape, but then just adding those squiggles. Now let's move to the other side. Let's make that line over here, downward to the plant. And then let's make this one. Thinner here at the bottom, a little bit of a rounded corner. Nice wonky lines. Maybe a little extra line here. And then we'll follow that shape again. Not entirely, just a few of these squiggles. And then for the other one, diagonal line like this. Curve at the bottom, maybe a little extra lines to add some character. And then again, some squiggles on the outside. Now let's move to the door. First, let's make an entire outline for it. Let's start here, go all the way to the top. Then we'll go to the right and then back down. Then let's go to the inside and make another line going up to here, Let's do the same on this side. And then connect here. And then we'll make another rectangle here on the inside. Then the underside of the door, let's make that a little bit higher. And then we'll make those windows in the door. So one here. Just roughly follow your sketch. You don't have to follow it exactly. Connect it here. I want some messy lines here. Maybe a little bit dark part here. Just embrace that messiness. Then for our windows, I want the same height roughly as the door. Make a line like this. We'll go down. And I want an extra line over here. There's like this display. Perhaps this is a shop. It's not perhaps it's a shop. It is a shop. I'm not sure what kind of shop it is, but they have this display here. Of course, you can turn it into any kind of shop. You can add whatever you like. And then let's make a line like this. Super wonky. And then let's make another window on this side, but for this one, I'll just make a more plain window. I won't add that display part. I want this one to be a little bit different. I do want an extra line here. Maybe a line like this. All these lines, little squiggles, they add interest to our illustration. Let's also add one here. Vertical one. Another little edge here. It's just like we're suggesting a lot of detail here. Maybe a line like this. And over here. And then we just have that sidewalk. Let's make some lines like this and a wiggly line following this one. And you can vary the thickness of your lines a little bit. I want to make them quite thin over here. But like I said, if you press harder, you will get thicker lines. And these diagonal lines towards our shop. Maybe some little like squiggles, maybe an extra line here. I think this looks good. Let's zoom out. I think we have a really nice shop here, and I think it's time to start coloring it. First, I'd like to remove the sketch. You can either delete it or just turn it off. And then let's make a new layer to start our coloring. Let's tap the plus for a new layer. And let's start off by going to the treasure chest brush pack over here, and let's choose Let's see. The wet paper base brush. This is a great brush to add like a watercolor paper effect, and it's great for our first layer of color. Let's start with this one, second color in the first row. The opacity of the brush is at 100%. I have the size set to 74%. And let's just go over our paper and add some of this color, like a wash. Some nice warm color. And you might have noticed that I didn't lift my pen, because every time you lift your pen, your pen will get charged with paint again, and I want this to stay light. So just keep your pen on your canvas and fill it with this color, and then we'll switch to this color, third color in the first row. And I'd like to add a little bit of that to our shop. So let's go over the shop area and add a bit of this bluish color just as a base. You can go a little bit on the outside, add these nice marks, perhaps a little bit over here. Again, I'm not lifting my pen. And now maybe we can add a little bit more over here for our shop. And then to make it a bit more subtle, you can just go to the layer, tap the N, and then let's set it to like 90%. Now let's make a new layer on top of this. Let's tap the plus. We are going to add another layer of color. And now let's try some water brushes from Procreate itself. Here we have the water brushes. And for instance, we can use the wash brush. Let's stick with this color. Let me check. Yeah, that's a nice color. The opacity of the brush is at 100%. I have the size set to 13. And now let's start adding some of this blue to our store. Just roughly. You don't have to be super tidy. Just here at the top. Then I want to switch to this color, fourth color in the first row. And let's use that for that sunshade. And over here, I want to make that slightly darker. Very gently. To make the brush a little bit smaller, let's go for 8% and also add this to those windows. And let's go for this door. Just slightly. And then let's switch to this blue. Fifth color in the first row. I want to use that for this area as well, for that sunshade. And for the lower area of the shop. Next, I'd like to switch to another brush. I'd like to go back to the treasure chest brush pack. There we have it. And I'd like to use the round watery brush. It's part of my watercolor brush pack, just like the wet paper base brush, and it'll give us a bit more control. Let's stick with this color. Let me check the size. That's actually nice. The opacity is at 100%. I have the size at 15. And it'll give us a bit more precision. I'd like to add this blue to this lower area. And I'll just go around the windows. Don't worry if you go over some other areas, like the plant a little bit. Let's also go a bit over this sunshade. And now let's switch back to that grayish color, fourth color in the first row. And use that for the door here. Also this top area. And for these windows. And we're slowly working from light to dark. So add a bit here at the top. And with this brush as well, every time you lift your pen, you will get new paint. Now let's switch back to this color, third color in the first row, and add some more of this nice color here at the top. So if you keep your pen on your screen, you can kind of like mix colors on your canvas. And that gives that nice watercolor effect. Let's switch to this darker color. That's the sixth color in the first row. And I'd still like to work on this top area and introduce some darker color. Go along the side here. And we can add a little bit of it over here. Some blotches in the window. And over here. Then let's grab this color, seventh color in the first row. And then let's go over these areas. Add some blotches on this screen. And I want this underside to be nice and dark, so I'll lift my pen more often to refill with paint every time. And also in these windows and for the door. You can make the brush a bit smaller now. Let's go for 6%. So we have a bit more precision for that door area. And also for these windows. Just add some blotches. A little bit here and here on this underside. And don't worry when you go outside of the lines a little bit. I feel like that adds interest to your piece. Some blotches in this window. Just going a bit like crisscross. Adding some interesting shapes there. A little bit here. Perhaps darken this lower area slightly. And if you feel like along the way you went way too dark, then you can just go back to your layer menu and lower the opacity of this layer and then just make a new layer on top and continue painting. It gives you a lot of control over your colors. Now let's move to this pink. Let's go for this first color in the second row. I want to add some pink in the windows here. I think it adds a nice contrast with the blues. Also over here. And at this area. Then let's grab this very dark color that we used for the line art. First color in the first row. I want to use that for really the darkest parts. Over here in the windows, I want those to be quite dark. Over here as well. And this underside of that sunshade. Perhaps a little bit over here. And maybe in the windows. Top areas are more like in shadow because of that sunshade. So we can add some darker colors there. A little bit over here underneath this area. And some wiggles here. Then let's move to some green colors. This first color in the second row, let's use that for our bushes. Just make some rounded, like wiggly motions. And don't lift your pen too often so you can blend on your canvas. And this one. Then let's switch to this color, fourth color in the second row, and use that for some darker touches. Again, don't lift your pen too often. Blend it on screen. Then for our pots, let's check. Maybe we can use this color. Fifth color in the second row. Let's go over here, add a little base color. And this one, let's also use this for our sidewalk. I'm making some bigger strokes, horizontal strokes, getting some variety. So I'm not just going all over and giving this color to the entire area, but creating some darker splotches. And let's add some more color variety to our windows. Let's also add some green there. Third color, second row. I have some green here at the top. It's just very abstract. We're not sure what's going on there in these windows. Perhaps they have pastries or flowers. I don't know. Maybe add some here. I just want a bunch of color variety. We can also use this orange color, sixth color in the second row. Let's blend that in here as well. And over here. Now let's switch to this yellow, seventh color in the second row. Add that in here as well. If you want to mix it a bit more, you can make the brush a bit bigger, like 15%. You can blend it some more. Maybe add a little bit to this plant as well. Then let's grab this color as well. 8 color in the second row. Add some of that, perhaps a little bit in the window. Just some touches. And then I'd like to grab the dark color again, first color in the first row. Let's make the brush a little bit smaller, 7%. And let's add some little wiggles here. Suggest some detail. A little bit over here, darken that. Perhaps a little bit on the underside of this plant. A little bit of a shadow underneath the pot. Maybe we can also add some more blue. Let's grab this color. Sixth color, or is it, no, seventh color in the first row. And we can use that some more in this window. A little bit on the sidewalk. And a little bit on this pot to give a little bit of variety here. Now what you can always do to add more detail to your drawing, you can always go back to your line art layer, grab that brush again. Let's just go to the top to recent brushes and grab our tinderbox brush. Then grab that dark color again, first color in the first row. And you can add some more squiggles, for instance, here in the window. Give that suggestion of some detail, perhaps some little lines. Sometimes once you have added the colors, you can start seeing more things you can add, more little squiggly lines. We can add some lines here, like this. Sometimes it just comes to you as you are painting, so don't worry. Just grab your inking brush again and add some more little tweaks. I've added a few squiggles on the door as if there's text there perhaps. So now we got some really nice colors here. Now I'd like to bring back some light. The first way you can add more light to your watercolor painting is by using a layer mask. We'll go to that layer on which we have the most of the paint And we'll tap it and then add a mask. And now on this layer mask, you can paint with black, and you can just use like the round watery brush, for instance, with black, and then you can remove some of the paint. I want this area to be a bit lighter, for instance, so we can just paint on there and add a bit of light to this sun shade. And for instance, if your windows got a little bit too dark, then you can just go over those edges and bring back some light. So using a layer mask like this gives you a lot of control. You can light this area up in case you want to add more light to your windows. You can just go over there and block some parts. I feel like I pretty much have enough light, I think. Maybe a little bit of light here in the window. But the most dramatic lighting can be added by just using a layer on top of this. We'll make a layer on top of this one and just use the tinderbox brush and a light color. We'll just use pure white. So just double tap in this area of your circle, of your color circle, and with the tinderbox brush, we can add some highlights as if we are using like a gel pen. With real watercolors, you could use a gel pen and add some light to your piece. Let's add some light to these windows, for instance, here. Some highlights by creating these diagonal lines. I want this to be a bit lighter. Maybe we can add a little highlight here. Lights on the windows. These are those final little touches that really add to your watercolor piece. Some highlights on this edge. And we're working on a separate layer, so no worries. If it's too much, then you can just go and erase parts of it. Maybe add some light here. And in the windows here. And also on these plants, you can add some little wiggles. A little highlight on the pot. Maybe some light on the window here. Some random little dots. And perhaps this plant has some white flowers. So we just add some dots. Highlight on the pot. And this really adds that final touch to your watercolor storefront. If you want to add even more to this piece and turn it into a little street, then come and join me at Patreon to follow part 2 of this tutorial. Now don't forget to share your work. I always enjoy seeing it. And then I will see you for the next tutorial. Thank you for watching.